Right, let's go to the phone line. 03717 We're talking about Jude Bellingham. Earlier on, you said you'd rather have Phil Foden over Gaza.
Rooney. Stop. Rooney. Yes.
And then I said out of the two.
I'd take Rooney again.
Okay, all right. Why you got such an attitude with it? It's your statement.
Some people are saying out here that Brian Robson was better than Gaza.
So two totally different players. That's such a ridiculous argument.
Okay, but that's what we do. We pick.
Yeah, but if you're going to compare players, they have to be the same type of player, right?
Yeah, but they're both midfield players, both centre midfield players. One or the other. Which one?
Brian Robson never ran with the ball at his feet like Gaza did.
Okay, but who's a better player?
Paul Gascoigne never tackled like Brian Robson.
Who's better?
Two different players.
We've got one spot.
But it's like saying you've got a goalkeeper and a...
No, it's not. No, it's because they both played the same position, centre midfield. So who would you rather have?
No, but they didn't. They didn't.
It's funny, isn't it? Just get the phone line.
I'll get the phone line.
Get the phone line.
Stuart's first up. Hello, Stuart.
Hey, Andy, you right, Darren?
How you doing, boss? You right?
Yeah, good, mate. You?
I'm all good, mate. I'm all good.
What would you like to say, Stu?
Yeah, it was just regards to Bellingham. Personally, I see him as like a future England captain.
Agreed.
I mean, if you took him, like if you took his age away and you put him in front of the camera now, you couldn't argue that he was the captain now. The way he talks, the way he holds himself, and what have you. But how he plays on the pitch as well. I think once the elder players have left and they've moved on, I think he will be leading the likes of Foden, Grealish, all the younger ones coming up. I really do think.
Stuart, let me ask you a question then, because it almost feels like Declan Rice is supposed to be the next one behind Harry Kane. Do you think that maybe Jude Bellingham might jump ahead of him?
Yeah, I think Declan's a good shout, but I think I really think he is. I think you couldn't argue with either or really, but I'd go with Bellingham myself.
Stu, let me ask you, who's the first name now on the England team sheet?
Bellingham.
Bellingham's the first name, is he?
Harry Kane, probably.
Okay, thanks, Stu.
Harry Kane, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Kane.
But it's a close second,
Bellingham.
isn't it?
Do you think Bellingham's name's on the team sheet before Declan?
Yeah. I think Jude Bellingham in this tournament has proved he's one of the most important players we have. I'd say second. I'm just trying to think.
Shout out to Harry Maguire as well, because he's played well.
What I will say as well, I know he's your mate, and I've never really bigged him up. I said it yesterday. I think Jordan Henderson is so worth his weight in gold in the England team.
I've been telling you that for years.
I'm not seeing it for years. Duncan joins us now. I wonder if he was named after the person he's phoned up to talk about. Hello, Duncan.
Afternoon, boys. How are you going?
We're good, very well. Are you named after Duncan Edwards?
Yes.
You are. That's who you want to talk about, right?
Well, comparing. You say, let's compare him to Gascoigne and Rooney and this and that. Why do you never go back? I never saw Duncan Edwards play. But speaking to the older generation and listening to what old managers said about him, he could have been England's #1 goalkeeper. He was an all-round footballer, and he was cut short in his prime, and everybody says he could have been better than Pelé. So why do we only go back 10, 15 years?
I think
something that annoys me.
Well, there's a number of reasons, Duncan. The main one being most of us never saw him play, sadly, right? Another one being there's not anywhere near the amount of footage then as there is nowadays. I mean, you go on YouTube, you can watch literally every single game of every player that's played. So it's so difficult to compare in an era where the game was so different and we don't have much to compare it to.
Well, as you've just said, we shouldn't compare any player to any other player. Let's take them for the player that they are now.
But you can compare players when you can see them. But unfortunately, with Duncan Edwards, we there's not enough footage, as you said. We just
listen. How old are you, Dunk?
Footage, but why? 52.
Okay, so you've never seen him. You've never seen 90 minutes of Duncan Edwards.
No, but I've listened to my dad, who was a Man United season ticket holder, who saw him play, who listened to it. I've listened to. You've watched documentaries. I've listened to old managers, Sir Matt Busby. Listen to people like that.
I know. Listen, I agree. My dad used to speak incredibly highly of Duncan Edwards, as did everyone of that generation. But it's a completely different game, and we'll never know, because my understanding is, as you quite rightly said, he was going to go on to be one of the greatest English players of all time. But because we just don't have the facility to go back and watch him play 90 minutes week in, week out, and the game's so different, I think it's fair to say you can't compare a player from the 50s or 60s to a player of the modern game.
Can you compare then somebody like Bellingham to somebody over 15 years ago? Because the game has changed so much in 15 years. You see, the game's changed.
Well, there's got to be a cut-off, Duncan. There's got to be a cut-off. You've got to be able to go back X amount of years.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but you're saying that the game changes. It changes every season.
I know, but
comparing.
Okay, you're right, but the jump between where the game was in the 50s and 60s, so 60, 70 years ago.
And also, there's a small
to
sample
now.
size. We only can see a little bit.
Yeah.
These players, modern day players, and even 20 years ago, you can see exactly everything they did. But obviously, when we sadly lost Duncan Edwards, like the footage is minimal.
Yeah. Listen, Dunk,
Yeah,
I hear what you're saying. Thank you for your call. We'll never know, sadly.
No.
But you're right. From what I understand, Duncan Edwards was one of the, well, if not the greatest 19-year-old at the time. He sadly passed away.
But it's like when people talk about Pele, right? I understand that he played obviously back in the 50s as well. But the reason
Pele?
Well, yeah, 58.
Oh, yeah, World Cup, yeah.
So when he won the World Cup, there's footage of him. So what we saw him at major tournaments.
Yeah.
So we can compare someone like Pele. But unfortunately, as you said with Duncan Edwards, he was so young.
You just can't do it.
Yeah.
Scotty's a Liverpool fan. Hello, Scott.
How you going? You all right?
We're great. How are you?
I'm good. Probably maybe better than both of you. I don't know, given the latest reports doing the rounds. Don't know. I mean,
listen, we're all right. We're top of the table at the minute, so I'm quite happy.
Oh, here we go. Okay. Well, let's see.
Maybe Andy.
No. We're still above Liverpool. I don't think the table's changed that much.
Yeah. It's 14 games, guys. It's not even the new year yet. Let's see. But anyway, Jesus is out for the next 3 months. But anyway, going back to Bellingham, I do think... I mean, Ben Jacobs has tweeted today, right, that Liverpool are the front runners and he's a respected journalist and whatnot.
Let me tell you now. Let me tell you, no one knows anything.
Yeah, why'd you say that?
Well, because the amount of times I've picked up a newspaper and on the back page it says X, Y, and Z and it's never happened.
No, but I agree with that. But I think someone like Ben Jacobs or David Ornstein, they've got very, very strong credibility. Like, they always seem to get things right and they call it first. So I've got to go with that. Okay. But I think the main reason behind it as well, I think Bellingham's spoken before about Gerrard being his idol, right? The number 8 shirt is vacant this summer when Keita is out of contract and goes. And the way Bellingham plays just does remind me of Gerrard, the way he gets forward, the way he gets his head on the end of crosses. His goal against Iran just reminded me of Gerrard in the final against AC Milan. There's a lot of similarity there. He's becoming very good friends with Henderson, as we can see. It's like he's looking up to him. It's like he's Henderson's love child. Trent as well. Like, you can just see what's being done in the background. And if we can get the money, which is my only worry about it, I can see Bellingham actually coming to us.
Scott, let me ask you a question. Annoyingly, I agree with a lot of what you've said about, his connection to Liverpool. But serious question, right? Serious question. If Liverpool don't finish in the top 4, and there's every chance, right? They probably will, but at the moment they're 6, and there's a lot of good teams above them. If they don't, do you think he'll still sign for a team that aren't playing Champions League football?
I do, because I think to him, and he comes from a family with his mum and his dad, I think, are his agent, as it were. They're very switched on, screwed on and whatnot. And I think to him it's about a project. And it's been known that Klopp's spoken to him a few times. He's seen the facilities with Henderson, with Trent, with Harvey Elliott, etc. I think to him, even if we was to miss out this season, which I don't think we will, because we can even win the Champions League and then get through that way personally. But what I mean is I think to him it's about the project. It's not a case of the next 2, 3, 4 years. I think for him and Rice are going to be England's centre midfield. I mean, if we could get Rice as well, I mean, that would be unbelievable. But
I hope you've got a spare 300 million just sitting about.
I know, right? And I think Rice is pretty much nailed on for Chelsea, unfortunately, because I think the pair of them are just great. But I do think the project is key here. So you made a good point about the Champions League, and it's possible. But I do think A, will turn it round, and B, I don't think... Look, let's face it, we're not going to be out of the Champions League if it was just for one season,
Scott,
right?
One last question, right, because I'm enjoying talking to you. One last question. It could go to a bidding war, right? Do you think
that's my worry.
If Dortmund say we want 150 million, right, I don't think Liverpool pay that.
No, I agree. And the only thing I would say to that is, right, you're going to say, well, we signed Nunez for 80 million and whatnot, which we did. People are forgetting we sold Nico Williams for 16 and Minamino for 15 and Mane for 40. So we haven't actually spent that much money in the summer just gone.
Yeah.
And I think the reason behind that was we're looking at trying to get Bellingham. And we couldn't get Bellingham because Haaland went. They didn't want to sell both in the same summer. But I do think we put that money aside. That's my only hope. If we get into a bidding war with wages with City, Madrid, PSG,
Chelsea.
and it does come down to money, Chelsea, and it does come down to money, which I don't think Bellingham and his family are about, then we may come unstuck.
Okay. Scott, thank you for your call. He's got it all worked out.
Yeah.
Listen, he's one of the front runners, we all know that, but let's hope. If you're listening, Jude, you see a bit of sense.